Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This episode is the brain and astral projection. Before we get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to support the work of Astral Club, you can do so on Patreon. When you sign up, and there is a link in the description, you get advanced episodes on Sunday, a library of downloaded episodes for your podcast app where you can listen anywhere, and of course, a Patreon email where we can talk back and forth and I can answer your questions. Next up, private lessons. If you'd like a lesson with me on how to astral project, I think you might find it very interesting. I know working one-on-one with people is infinitely easier for both parties because I get to customize the lesson based on the concerns, interests, fears of the individual person. And they can also, the student can share with me issues which might be sensitive, which they might otherwise be shy about sharing. Anyway, if interested, I'll send you some information, and there is an email where you can reach me in the description. The brain and astral projection. For this episode, I'm going to be relying upon Astral Dynamics by Robert Bruce, and of course, infusing it with my own comments, experiences, and theories. So, out of the body experiences are, by definition, experiences which occur outside of the realm of your physical senses. This is highly unusual for your brain because your brain is used to getting biochemical information from your variety of five senses, which is then transferred to it by the nerves, and then it interprets these impulses based on its capabilities, based on its experiences. So how and why do we have memories? And why do we sometimes fail to have clear memories about astral projections? Let's talk about that. Bruce says, well, he defines things two different ways, and it's obvious. Reality is two-phase. It's objective and subjective. An objective experience is one in which the perceptions are gained directly through the physical body senses. And a subjective experience are perceptions that are gained or affected by your mind or imagination. For example, I remember I was up in Canada on a business trip once, and it was negative 15 or 20 degrees Fahrenheit. It was cold. I could have rounded up peoples as diverse as the Inuit, sometimes called the Eskimos in the old days, or people who live in Mississippi or the tropics. And they would all agree that, yes, indeed, it is objectively cold. Okay? Negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit is objectively very cold. However, a subjective experience is very different. Two people from different backgrounds could walk into a museum. When they're done, one person could comment and say, "What a horrendously boring experience that was. I hated it." And that same person could come out after the same amount of time spent in that museum, and they could instead say, "Oh, it was a wondrous experience. I loved the art and the paintings and the sculptures. These people were masters. I just looked at their technique and marveled at their brilliance." So in a subjective experience, you've got two different people describing very different experiences, despite the fact they were exposed to the same stimuli. So how does all this work with the brain? Well, Bruce goes on to say that he believes that the brain is capable only of receiving bioelectrical signals, and that's true. It's not capable of receiving direct sensory input. Your sense organs have to break down these perceptions into complex bioelectrical impulses. The brain exists in total darkness and silence inside a heavy bone box, which we call a skull, and it's isolated from the physical world. It has no nerves and can feel neither pressure nor pain, neither heat nor cold. It might be said to float in a dark, void-like dimension, receiving sensory input from the real world in the physical dimension only via remotely gathered and transmitted bioelectrical signals. And this is similar to a description of how the brain receives or remembers sensory input gained during astral projection or out-of-the-body experiences. What we have to keep in mind here is that every astral projection ends up as a memory, either a clear one or a dim one. There is no memory of the actual OBE unless the projected double, i.e. your astral body, successfully downloads what Bruce calls your shadow memories into the physical brain during reintegration. I'll comment on that in a second. Once this happens, the physical brain then remembers sensory perceptions received during your projection as if it had received them directly and firsthand. We have to remember that our physical brain is not designed to efficiently process experiences which are divorced from your physical body. It is instead designed to do the best little computer job possible based on the input that it gets from your physical sensory apparatus. That's how it works. When we're talking about experiences that are outside of the physical, it becomes tricky. For instance, many people observe a vibratory state. It feels like their whole body is buzzing before they leave their body. I have certainly felt that at times. At other times, I've had experiences, a handful of times, where it felt like the bed was jumping up and down. Now, I know for a fact the bed was not jumping up and down. It was my brain interpreting in the best way it knows how what I was experiencing due to my astral body bouncing in and out of my physical body as it attempts to leave. So there is input that is being sent to the physical brain. Now, the physical brain tries to make sense of this in the best logical way possible. It says, okay, we know the physical body is not moving because we know the sensation information that the brain, i.e. we, would get if that was happening. Okay, that's not happening. But yet this weird stimulus of bouncing up and down is occurring. So the brain then reasons that if the physical body is not moving, then it must be the bed on which the body rests upon that is moving. So you see, the brain misinterprets things because it doesn't have the language, the experiences, the ability to properly process what's actually going on, because what's going on is outside of its typical realm of physical sensory input. So it says, okay, it must be the bed bouncing up and down then. When you travel in the astral, when I travel in the astral, I have learned to report to myself my experiences, to review them as I am experiencing them. I'll say something like, okay, I'm flying over this city now, and I can see the lights below. It's somewhat cloudy out. I'm flying through the clouds now. Okay, I'm going to choose to go to the moon, let's say. And so, bam, I then, lose consciousness, find myself on the moon. And then I describe to myself, okay, I'm on the moon now. And I soak in this information as clearly as I can. And then I describe what I'm doing as I'm on the moon. I find that by narrating my experiences, I am doubling the chance that once I reintegrate with my physical body, that those memories will have a much better chance of being efficiently translated into memories contained within my physical brain. And it will sometimes remember these experiences very clearly. And I will get tactile sensation information. And what's interesting is that sometimes I suspect that while I'm in the astral, I'm not really getting the full tactile experience. Oh, yes, excellent vision. Yes, excellent telepathy. But I'm unsure about the other senses, like smell and taste and touch, for instance. There's a basic sense of touch, I suspect, where you get a lot more information than you get from a physical touch. But keep in mind that when I actually return to my body and these memories are being downloaded, the download is probably corrupting somewhere along the line. Or maybe not corrupt, maybe corrupting is a bad word. Maybe I mean translated into physical sensations, because that's what the brain does. So it's got to take these shadow memories, these odd experiences that you collect while you're outside the body and outside its range of physical sensation. And by the translation process, it may add some stuff in or take some stuff out. As I recall being on the moon, once I'm back in my body, I may also remember a feeling of walking on that moon to some extent, because my brain is telling me, based on this memory that I've just given it, that I was walking on the moon. Therefore, it supplies the memories of the feeling of walking because it knows what that feeling is like. It's just like when I say to you, imagine cutting a lemon. I'll bet you everybody listening to this now has at least some smell or some taste, even if it's just small, in your mind, where you can almost taste a lemon, because your brain knows what that lemon tastes like and smells like, because it's a very strong sensory input. So it's very easy for the brain to fill in the blanks, which is what it does, I suspect, with astral projections. People report tasting fruit when they eat it on the astral, or smelling something, or touching something and getting tactile imagery. And I suspect that the brain, your physical brain, is taking these memories that you have brought back and is filling in the blanks. See, and there's some disagreement on this fact, because people swear up and down, oh yes, I did taste it. Yes, but you're now talking to me in your physical body, aren't you? Which means you downloaded the memory, which means your brain has the opportunity to fill in the blanks. And that's what it does best. It's also great at pattern recognition, which is why when humans look up into the sky and they see an inherently chaotic alignment and situation of stars in the sky, it connects the dots and makes them into pictures. That's another thing the brain does. It makes order out of inherent chaos. So we've established here that the brain is not what you consider a 100% reliable organ, because it is using your subjective experience to remember and interpret objective experiences. And certainly it is filling in a good number of blanks when you are off on the astral and you return with these memories, and they may be downloaded efficiently, they may be downloaded inefficiently, they may be lost, but they're most certainly being interpreted. And so that's something that I believe very strongly, because think about it. The reason that the human body developed, and other animals too, not just us, taste and smell, it's because we didn't want to be poisoned. It was a survival mechanism. Yes, with your smell, you can smell food that could help feed you. But you also have a sense of taste and smell, which senses bitterness, for instance. And in the early days of mankind, many poisons or poisonous substances were interpreted by us as bitter. And indeed, it's thought that our ancient ancestors, going thousands and thousands of years back, had better and more bitter tasting areas on the tongue, because bitter was something that was encountered on a regular basis, and it was crucial that it could discern that. Many people today, though, scientists tell us, have much lesser abilities to taste bitterness and to really experience it fully, because we don't eat a lot of bitter foods anymore. Especially our processed food. Everything's full of sugar and salt. The last thing anybody wants when they're selling you their product is for you to make a face, a bitter tasting face with their product. So all in all, remember that your brain is interpreting your experiences. And if you want better experiences, then I suggest you do the narration, much like I do when I astral project, because it will help you to have a clearer download of your astral projection memories. But please be sure that it is being interpreted. It is being translated. And even the best translators will tell you that sometimes they've got to fill in the blanks themselves, or sometimes they get things wrong because it was lost in translation. One thing that I find interesting is the subject of blind people. And I won't talk about this for very long, but Bruce does get into a particular example of somebody who astral projected and he was blind since birth. So his brain had no experiences of vision, none. When he projects, he doesn't see suddenly. What he does instead and is he believes that he encounters a 3D environment where his senses, his other senses, remember we say that, oh, when you're blind, for instance, your other senses tend to make up for some of that. Well, that is doubly so, or triply so, in the astral. And when he returns to his body, those memories are then downloaded, and they're translated in using the sensory experiences, using these subjective experiences that the blind person since birth has available to him. Now, I even have a weird sneaking suspicion, but I can't prove this, and I don't know that anyone will be able to, that a blind person since birth might have astral vision, but they don't have the language for it. And most certainly, when they return to their physical body, that information will be discarded as unusable, as file not found, okay? So what is then remembered is remembered through the available sensory experiences that a blind person since birth relies upon to operate in the normal physical world. That's just a little theory of mine. which makes sense to me. But at any rate, that is that's the example that Bruce uses whenever the blind question comes up, and it does come up from time to time, and that's my take on it. Well, if you found this presentation interesting, please hit the like button, share it with those of like mind, subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure that bell is solid so you're notified when the Wednesday afternoon and Saturday morning episodes are posted. And please leave your questions and comments, what you think about your ability to remember your experiences, anything that you would like to add, any questions. I love that stuff, and everyone else gets to benefit from it. As always, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.